Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Polite Society News. My name is Paul Lathrop. Joining me tonight and bringing him in now, there we go, Rob Morse. Rob is a longtime compatriot of mine. He is with me on Polite Society podcast on Monday nights. Most Monday nights he's here when he's not underwater. And he's also the man behind Self-Defense Gun Stories and the Slow Facts blog. Rob, thanks for coming along today, man.
Oh, my pleasure.
So let's go ahead and get started here. Let me go back over to my show notes. First story up tonight, and this is a big one. I follow on Twitter. I follow Mark Smith, Four Boxes Diner, and he got a little bit of a tiff with one of his followers. They're saying, look, he said, this is huge news. The Fourth Circuit, has declared that Maryland's their restrictions are unconstitutional. One of the listeners says, look, everything you say is major breaking news. He says, well, this actually really is, to the point where when we get to our next story, he says, would you say this is huge news? Anyway, this first one. A decade ago, Maryland lawmakers imposed a new burden on residents hoping to exercise their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms to bear a handgun by creating a handgun qualification license. Before any would-be gun owner can take possession of a pistol, they must first jump through several state-mandated hoops, from submitting fingerprints as part of a background check investigation to taking a 4-hour-long firearm safety training course that includes the firing of at least one live round of ammunition. After waiting 30 days or more for approval, the would-be gun owner then has to go through another background check and an arbitrary 7-day waiting period before they can take possession of their pistol, though they must run another bureaucratic gauntlet before they're actually allowed to carry the sidearm in self-defense. So this Maryland, I'm going to say, is not New York. It's not New Jersey, but it wasn't far away. And this is
add California to the list, and
this is huge, great news for anybody that lives in Maryland, and really anybody that lives in the Fourth Circuit.
Well, we haven't told them what the news is, which is that on Monday, a 3-judge panel of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, this is a federal court, said that what we've been arguing for years, hey, judges, look over here, this doesn't look right. Maryland's handgun qualification licensing scheme is an unconstitutional barrier to exercising a fundamental right. They said the plaintiff's challenge must succeed, reversing a lower district court's opinion and delivering an important victory, in this case, to the Firearms Policy Coalition, to Maryland Shall Issue, to the Independence Institute, and to Atlantic Guns, in addition to several named plaintiffs. Everybody thinks, oh, this is Bruin. No, this is not Bruin. This is the intermediate courts, inferior to the Supreme Court, yes, finally applying Heller.
Yes.
This is a gun ban case. Because you can't even buy it. Okay.
Yeah. This is.
I think. Hold on, Paul. I think that was wrong. Yeah, this does relate to Bruin because this is essentially a licensing scheme. My bad.
Well, and this is. I think you were closer than when you said this goes to Heller. This is about the ability to acquire firearms.
Okay, yeah, you can argue that that's a ban. Okay.
Yeah, we go.
All firearms are banned unless you do this. To me, that's licensing, but okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now it'll then go to a en banc panel on the 4th. The question is, do anti-gun Democrats want to lose small or lose large? Because if the 4th says, oh, that's fine, then literally the Supreme Court they don't have to take the case. they can do something called the GVR. Hey, you know what? That is worth looking at. We're going to grant certiorari, vacate the lower court ruling, and remand it back to you guys to go fix it. Basically, they said in one step, you're wrong, fix it.
That's what they did with the California assault weapons ban. They sent it back.
Which the Ninth Circuit Court then said, oh, yeah, it's still wrong. So basically, the Ninth Circuit ignored the Supreme. So, we'll see. It's going to be fascinating.
I'm wondering, we are, if you believe Mark Smith of the Four Boxes Diner, if you follow that.
And you should.
Yes, you should. We're coming up on Monday is what he says is the last day that we can expect new cases to be added to the Supreme Court's docket for this year.
Right.
And I've got my eye on Monday. Be working a whole lot between here and then, but where I can, I'm going to be paying attention. And
there's also what they call the shadow docket. So
you talk about
the docket that Mark's talking about. Now, me quoting Mark Smith. Oh my gosh. So, okay. He's saying, they can formally grant to hear a case. Meanwhile, because time marches on, hey, Supremes, this lower court didn't listen to you. Why don't you GVR this case? At which point, that's a shadow docket. They can take that up at any point.
All right, let's start. And by the way, I want to reiterate, we've gotten no comments on either Facebook or YouTube yet. So if you're watching us, if you would, just check in just to make sure I've got everything working right. I think I do, but
both of us have been muted for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah,
please let us know.
Right. Restream says we've got viewers, so please, if you're watching, chime in. Let us know that's all working. But Rob, while we're waiting for people to chime in, why don't we talk about Oregon? You wanna take that one?
Of course. In a sometimes blistering, this judge was pretty direct. He wrote a 44-page ruling. Now, this is a circuit court judge in Oregon. He said Tuesday that Measure 114, that was their constitutional amendment. It was barely passed, less than 1% majority in 2022. That constitutional amendment is unconstitutional under Oregon state's constitution and is therefore permanently enjoined. The detailed ruling by presiding circuit court judge, this one is named Robert S. Rascio.
I think
he's in the 24th Judicial District, covers a couple counties. The ruling is in direct contradiction to an earlier decision by a U.S. district judge that the measure is legal under the federal constitution. Now, interesting, state constitutions and the measures required to be constitutional can be different than laws at the federal level. Federal gun laws have just a few part test. I think for state laws in Oregon, it was like a 5-part test. But this Measure 114 requires a permit to purchase a firearm. The judge rejected that. It says, that's not a public safety policy. That's an infringement on the Second Amendment. According to Oregon Public Radio, Democrat State Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum, is going to appeal that decision.
Yeah, and I very much expect it to be appealed. I do not expect the appeal will be successful. The Oregon Constitution, I haven't looked it up, but my last time I looked at it, I haven't revisited it lately, but it is it goes beyond, the wording goes beyond what the federal Second Amendment says. And You cannot write
What?
Measure 114 wasn't a constitutional amendment. It was a state law that was
Oh,
passed by voter initiative. And
my bad.
you cannot, no matter if a state initiative is passed that says, I'm just going to pick something random. Prostitution is now legal. If it's not legal in the Constitution, if there's constitutional provision against it, state law is moot. You've got to stay within your state, Constitution. So,
What I find fascinating, though, is that we've seen judges who said, "Oh no, gun bans don't infringe the Second Amendment." I mean, so they will stand on their head to call black white.
well, and look at last week, and I believe we talked about this on a Monday night on Polite Society. There's a case in Colorado where the judge
Right.
ruled that a 10-day waiting period does not violate Heller, and it does not violate the Second Amendment simply because keep and bear does not mean acquire.
Right. Right.
So
No.
they're going to create all kinds of ways. They're going to, like you said, they're going to stand on their heads, wave one foot around, and do everything they can to try and, la 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 la. This isn't happening, but it's happening.
Again, if these legal issues fascinate you, I could not recommend Mark Smith's Four Boxes Diner high enough. Basically, he says if the law touches the Second Amendment, doesn't need to be a core principle in it. Keep and bear. Oh, ammunition licensing. That's firearms. Any weapon used offensively or defensively. All these terms have been described. Oh, you want to ban body armor for civilians. You want to license that. That's a Second Amendment issue. All of it. And then once you've established that, the burden shifts onto the government.
I'm not sure. And I know in California there are restrictions on purchasing body armor. I don't know about Louisiana. Seems to me to be a free state, nearly as free as South Dakota. South Dakota, there are no restrictions. But I would strongly encourage, if you can buy, especially if you're an instructor, buy it. And if you're around and teaching somebody you haven't known all your life, use it. Mistakes happen, and when you're dealing with potentially lethal weapons, and you want to cover yourself as best you can.
Gotcha. I did like, who was it that had the red shirt that said "not a safe direction"?
I've got that on the back of Polite Society podcast T-shirts.
Okay.
And let's see. There was somebody, I got to admit, that wasn't original. I did pick it up off of somebody, but I cannot remember who. Let's, and we still don't have any check-ins. Wow, this is.
Trap?
Yeah, this is, I'll go off on it. Do you want to read this one? I'll go off on it when you're done.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, speaking of standing on your head, for years people have purchased solvent traps and followed BATFE procedures to say, by the way, if I drill a hole in the end of this solvent trap, it's now a suppressor. So I manufactured it. I'm the manufacturer. It's a Form 1. I pay a $200 tax stamp. Well, recently the ATF started rejecting all applications for anybody to make a solvent suppressor at home. Now, in a letter written to federal firearms licensees November 20th, a couple days ago, the ATF said, no, solvent traps, no, they never existed. Those were always, you bought an unregistered silencer, even though you had to modify it to put it on your gun. This is basically, they're saying it's the block of aluminum is a receiver, therefore you have to license it, therefore you're a gun manufacturer. Again, by another name. The ATF said that some devices marked as solvent traps are suppressors because they have features and characteristics that can be used once modified to make a gun less noisy. Wow. I cannot wait till that hits the Fifth Circuit. Objections filed in 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Okay, Paul, your turn.
This is absolutely the same as saying if you own a 3D printer, you are now a firearms manufacturer. There's no difference here. Absolutely none.
And that plastic spool, that's a gun.
Yes.
Constructive possession. You can convert it into a gun anytime you wanted.
Okay. Yeah, I could also convert it into a lens cover for a 1963 Buick that I bought and am restoring. That's a beautiful thing about 3D printers. You can do so many wonderful things with them. Where I'm going off on this is this. This is going to be part of the end of the ATF. We have this. We have the and the Fifth Circuit has already done a beautiful job with the 80% lowercase. I believe
Right.
that's.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I just
Better man
can't.
than I am.
Doggone it, we've had him on Polite Society before. At least we talked about having him on.
And now I know who you mean.
Yeah. But doggone it. I'll get to it probably about 2 minutes after we go off the end of the show. I'll remember it. But they've already done a fantastic job with the homemade firearms. And pushing that towards it going away. I very much expect this somewhere in the Fifth Circuit to be filed in the next day or two. Either SAF or I got to be honest with you, man. I've been thinking about this a lot since I changed employment. SAF is doing fantastic, wonderful work. You need to be a member of SAF. They're not the only ones. We mentioned earlier that earlier Fourth Circuit case, that was Firearms Policy Coalition. They've been very quick at filing lawsuits and also successful recently. Gun Owners of America has been really quick. And NRA is doing all right. And God help me, I got to say, the National Association of Gun Rights has been stumbling in the dark and occasionally getting one here and there. Although I will not. Yes, you're right. Michael Cargill is the Cargill versus Garland is the case in the Fifth Circuit that has to do with homemade firearms. And we are winning on a lot of fronts, and a lot of the reason is I just named off 5 organizations that are filing lawsuits and having success to varying degrees. We're gonna win. The only thing that can stop us at this point is a change in the makeup of the Supreme Court.
Here's why what you are doing, Paul, every evening is so important. We're trying to change public opinion. We're trying to change the window of what's possible. My neighbor should be allowed to have a gun. Yeah, he's safer than the police. Didn't you know that? Oh, you should listen to Paul Lathrop. So we're trying to change the culture, because unless we do, the politics will eventually work against us. I mean, the media is lying in mass about how dangerous firearms are. They're a $1 billion anti-gun publicity campaign every year, and it's the alternative media that's telling the truth. And it's an important truth that's saving millions of lives a year.
You just dovetailed into our next story.
And how I did that?
I'm telling you, this is this is a poll I've been also seeing a lot of social media on Twitter and some on Facebook about. A new poll says guns are good and progressives are bad. A Harvard/Harris poll, and that's part of what shocked me about this, is this comes from Harvard, conducted November 15th and 16th, shows 6 in 10 voters believe owning a gun is a necessary part of protecting themselves from criminals. Poll researchers asked, quote, do you think crime and safety in your community is getting better or worse or staying about the same? 42% of voters said things were getting worse versus 21% who said times were becoming better. 49% of independents were among those who said crime is worsening. Researchers also asked, do you think you need to have a gun today in case you are attacked by criminals, or do you think owning a gun is unnecessary? A majority of voters across the board, whether Democrat, Republican, or Independent, said they should own a gun to be safe. Now, breaking it down by party affiliation, 54% of Democrats said owning a gun is necessary. Fix your party, Democrats. If 54% of you believe your party is wrong, fix your party. 77% of Republicans and 56% of independents. Moreover, a majority of American voters believe woke politicians are a driving force behind rising crime in the United States. 55% of voters concurred that woke politicians are to blame for rising crime, while 45% disagreed. An even larger majority of voters, 67%, support removing district attorneys who are soft on crime. Hear that one, Soros? Rob, before we get into comments, before we discuss this, let's talk about this next story you got.
Okay, you want to dive in? Because guess what? There are more polls. We used to say that 41% of us live in a house where someone, maybe us, maybe someone else in the house, owns a gun. They redid that poll recently, and the percentage jumped to 52%. All those commentators, remember back a few years ago, who said, no, all the gun sales that we see, that's just a few gun owners who own a lot of guns. Guns aren't very popular at all. We have a name for that. That's called a lie.
Mm-hmm.
The NBC National News poll found that 66% of Republican voters say that they or someone in their household owns a gun. Among independent voters, the percentage is 45%. Well, now, remember how it used to be 41% was the average? Now that's the average for Democrats.
Yes.
41% of Democrats live in a gun-owning household.
So in other
Another
words,
revelation. What?
41% of Democrats need to switch parties.
Another revelation, though, is who are owning those guns. 56% of whites, 41% of blacks. That was a 17% increase in black ownership in the last 4 years. Welcome to Armed America. We've been waiting for you. How can we help?
And I honestly believe, just like all polling, these numbers are low. If somebody calls me at random, do you own guns? I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going to give them a straight answer.
Right.
You know, and I'm certainly not going to give them the amount of firearms that are here. But at any rate, I think those numbers are low.
Point, there was a collegiate study, and I forget which university, that said, oh, yeah, you know, when about 4 out of 10 people say they own a gun, when we look at gun registration rates, that might be as high as 60%. So
yeah,
you might be right. I'm not sure here. What is this poll really saying?
We are starting to get comments. 24 minutes in, we're getting comments. Warsaw Patriot, hey man, thanks for checking in, Warsaw Patriot. Thanks, Jim Rawls, also for checking in. The media should be more concerned about terrorist attacks happening, like what happened in Buffalo, New York, over shooting happening in the United States. I'm so tired and done with the media propagandizing people's death. Now that I just earlier today, I was talking with Susan out in the living room here, and I just found out this afternoon about the bombing, the terrorism incident at the border up by the Rainbow Bridge up in New York. Niagara Falls, yeah. And I happened to stumble as I was waiting for Rob to check in when we were going to get ready to go live. I was on YouTube. I happened to stumble across security video that shows this car, and it was doing 100+ miles an hour, got airborne, and was
hit a fence.
No, normal car is going down the road like this. By the time this thing struck and exploded, it was like this.
Ooh.
So I'm wondering if that wasn't maybe just a full tank of fuel and somebody heavy on throttle, light on brains, heavy on intoxicating substances in the body. I wonder if that's, the 2 people died. That's tragic, but I want to, unless they were out yelling Aloha Snack Bar, I'm wondering if this really is terrorism or just a really horrible accident.
Yeah, I can't tell. The FBI will figure it out.
Yes.
Will they tell us? Now, that's another question. It depends on the political fallout to the answer. I'd like our listeners to comment. I've seen this comment more and more from conservatives. In fact, this is a litmus test between commentators. Conservative commentators will say crime is localized to failing Democrat-controlled cities. To us, to people who I think have compassion, we're saying, you've got a problem. Please fix it. People are suffering. And the apologists say, oh, no, crime's everywhere. We're not any different. In fact, it's your fault because you have guns.
And that always takes me back to the crime statistics, like comparing 2 very similar sized cities, Houston and Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago crime is rampant. I heard a statistic earlier. I believe we covered it on Polite Society on Monday is maybe where I heard it. Somebody is shot by gangs in Chicago every 2.1 hours on average.
Right.
And in Houston, do they have crime? Yes. Is it 1/50th as bad as Chicago? No.
Not even. Right. Interesting. The joke that follows right after that is there are hundreds of gun stores in Houston. There are dozens and dozens of shooting ranges. There are none in Chicago.
Let me get
other than the alleys.
I'm going to get to a comment here going to talking about, and this is not gun related. We just kind of got on this by accident, but thank goodness I am on a totally independent channel where I can talk about whatever the heck I want. If I want to give out my wife's banana bread recipe on the air, nobody's going to stop me. I'm not going to because then she would get mad at me. But okay. Harold on the Facebook side says, one news source said no sign of explosives on board going to the terrorism attack, what they're calling a terrorism attack in New York.
Hello, Harold. Thank you for listening.
Yes, absolutely. Rob, you got a comment direct to you from Warsaw Patriot that then we're getting comments just screaming in. Crime is also the result of failure of solving and ending the root causes that creates a domino effect.
Yeah.
Well, it's
precursor conditions. Gotcha.
The problem, and I hate to get all conservative here because I'm not conservative. I'm libertarian. I'm a member of the Republican Party, will be until the Republican Party leaves me. But I am the root causes that are, and we could go an hour and a half on this, I'm sure, between Rob and I, and we've got about a minute left. The root causes are generally liberal policies. The government will take care of you. The government will provide you income. The government will do this. The government will do that. That creates the underlying problems that cause the crime. And then you get the soft district attorneys. Well, poor Johnny's just getting his life turned around. Let's give him one more chance. Oh, it's so racist to put Johnny in jail, demand that he gets bail when rich people can bail out without a problem. So let's go with a bailless society. You just have to promise you're going to show up in court. Those are the liberal policies that are destroying places like Chicago, like New York City, like Los Angeles.
Well, they passed a constitutional amendment in California that crimes of less than $950 are misdemeanors punishable by a traffic ticket.
Yep.
So can you have a grocery store in that environment? We're finding out. You cannot have a shoe store. You can't have a drugstore.
And George Geller, I want to get this one up too. Rob, I'm sorry. If you've got to get out of here, let me know.
Yeah, let's see what they got.
The root cause is usually no dad at home. And that goes back to the government. The government will take care of you. The government will give you money, but the government will only give money to a single mom, not to a family. Therefore, dad's got to take a hike.
George, you and I agree, and it breaks my heart.
All right, let's. We're good. We're getting again. I don't. Everybody joining us late. Thank you for joining us. We've got so many comments coming in. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them because I do want to get out of here. I've got to get ready to go to work tonight.
If you want your comments covered, get in early.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Central Time, Friday night and Sunday night. I will be live. Set your clocks. Be ready to join us at 7 o'clock. And Friday, I couldn't remember what the topic was that we set up for Friday. Friday will be de-escalation will be the topic that Tom Walls and I talk about on Training Friday. Sunday, Rob Morse is coming back to join me for the weekend show. It's an hour-long show on Sunday. Also, Tony Simon is going to be joining us. And one more, I'm not sure who yet, but we're going to have one more person joining us for the weekend show. Rob, on our way out the door, will you please plug Self-Defense Gun Stories in your blog and anything else you'd like to do, man?
There you go. I host this Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. 20 minutes once a week. It's a snack food of a podcast. Put us in your pocket. I write the Slow Facts blog, a couple articles a week. 2,100 articles waiting for you there. By the way, someone did the math on Self-Defense Gun Stories. I have over 110 hours of content. A lot of my listeners are going back to older podcasts and going, ooh, that looks interesting. My writing is picked up at Clash Daily and sometimes carried at Ops Lens. All thank you. See you Sunday.
Yes, sir. And one thing, Rob, we're already long. It doesn't matter at this point. One thing I've noticed with Polite Society podcast is we'll get new people that come, and we're 684 episodes into Polite Society podcast. This is going to be like episode 10 of Polite Society News. They'll listen to episode 684. Oh, this is good. I like this. Let's go back to episode 1. Please, by the way, don't do that. But they'll go back.
Go to episode 10, please.
30, 40 episodes, and they'll start picking them up from there. And so, but really, Self-Defense Gun Stories is evergreen. The stories you cover are all fairly recent, and you've got, goodness, we've got millions of defensive gun uses every day in the United States. Probably 3 or 4 of them hit the media every day. You select some of the best, and you talk about some of the ones we can learn things from, and you talk about a couple, 3 of them every show. I think it's incredibly valuable, and thank you for doing that. And oh, by the way, I believe you're in the top 1/10 of 1% of all podcasts throughout the globe. So,
well, okay, sure, I'll lay claim to that. For 2A podcasts, I'm at a 3-way tie for second place. Top 1%.
Well, you're even beyond polite society. Again, it's a testament to the putting out good content and putting it out reliably, something I had a challenge with for quite a while. So anyway, that is going to do it for us today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for commenting, everybody. Please do come join me Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. Podcast listeners, come join us live, Facebook or YouTube or Rumble, 7 p.m. Central Time, Friday night and Sunday night. Rob will be back for the weekend show. That's it, everybody. Thanks again. We will see you next time.